Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is arguably the most consequential political transformation of the 20th century. I'm talking about the massive global power shift between 1945 and 1980 that completely dismantled European empires and, well, totally reshaped the world we live in today. Let's get right into exactly how this incredible transfer of global sovereignty unfolded.
So here's the core mystery we're looking at today. Between 1945 and 1980, why did some nations literally vote their way to freedom while others had to fight grueling, bloody wars for it? Decolonization wasn't just one single event. It was a massive spectrum. We're going to unpack the hidden structural rules that really dictated which path a colony was forced to take.
But before we get into the actual mechanics of it all, I just want you to think about this number, 1 billion. That is the staggering amount of people added to the community of self-governing peoples during this incredibly short window of time. That's a massive portion of humanity suddenly getting to decide their own fate.
And that 1 billion people? Well, that translated into more than 80 new nations born across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and the Caribbean. This wave entirely redrew the world map and actually forged the modern international institutions that we interact with every single day.
Case Study 1. The Peaceful Paradigm. We're starting off with India, which was Britain's largest colony. Now, the decisive figure here is Mohandas Gandhi. After spending 21 really formative years fighting racial discrimination in South Africa, he returned to India in 1915 and did something completely unprecedented. He transformed the Indian National Congress from this kind of elite political club into a genuine mass campaign for the rural poor, heavily emphasizing Hindu-Muslim unity through these massive boycotts.
And the real engine of this mass mobilization was something called satyagraha, which basically translates to truth force. Now, you've got to understand, this wasn't just passive resistance. It was active, highly organized, and disciplined nonviolent civil disobedience. The core idea here, you willingly accept suffering to morally convert your opponent, insisting that you simply cannot build a peaceful nation using violent means. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer strategic genius of the 1930 Salt March. Gandhi chose salt. It's a basic necessity that literally everyone used, but the British strictly monopolized it. By walking 240 miles to the coastal village of Dandi just to illegally evaporate seawater, he found this brilliant loophole for civil disobedience that was accessible to the absolute poorest citizen. Taking down an empire with a pinch of salt, it permanently delegitimized British rule on the world stage.
However, the actual transfer of power itself was absolutely devastating. In August 1947, the partition into a predominantly Hindu India and a predominantly Muslim Pakistan triggered one of the largest mass migrations in all of human history. We're talking 14 million people crossing new borders, resulting in anywhere from 200,000 to 2 million deaths. Gandhi was entirely heartbroken by this violence, and he was tragically assassinated the following year by a radical who viewed his accommodations as a betrayal.
Case Study 2. The Armed Inferno. So why did Algeria's path diverge so violently from India's? Well, the answer really comes down to colonial infrastructure. India was governed by indirect rule over a massive indigenous population. But France treated Algeria as an integral part of France itself, 3 actual French departments. You had 1 million European settlers, known as the Pied Noir, who were legally dominant over 9 million indigenous Muslims. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why Algeria's entrenched settler structure changed the entire dynamic and made violence almost inevitable. Because of this massive inequality, the Front de Libération Nationale, or the FLN, launched an armed revolt in 1954. And the resulting 8-year war was characterized by just extreme violence on both sides. The FLN utilized guerrilla warfare and civilian terrorism, while the French military responded with the systematic use of torture. It was a vicious, completely unyielding conflict. The war did finally end with the Evian Accords in March 1962, but the fallout was staggering. Even though 91% of Algerians voted for independence, it cost anywhere from 300,000 to 1.5 million Algerian lives. Plus, it destabilized the French Fourth Republic and brought Charles de Gaulle to power. It really exposed a deep contradiction: a French republic claiming to uphold universal human rights while violently maintaining colonial rule. Following all of this, 1 million Pieds Noirs fled to France as refugees.
The secret formula: 5 colonial variables.
So the crucial point is that negotiated independence and armed struggle were not just random occurrences. A hidden formula practically dictated a colony's fate based on 5 key variables. First, the size and stake of the settler population. Second, the colony's economic value to the metropole. Third, the independence movement's military and organizational strength. Fourth, democratic political pressure back home. And fifth, Cold War superpower pressures. In India, these variables heavily favored compromise. But in Algeria, that massive settler population practically guaranteed violence.
The ripple effects, Kenya and sub-Saharan Africa.
Now, looking broadly, Kenya sits right in the middle of our spectrum between India and Algeria. From 1952 to 1960, the Kikuyu people launched the Mau Mau Uprising to fight back against British settlers, and, similar to Algeria, those settlers really escalated the conflict. Britain responded brutally with mass detention camps and torture before Kenya finally reached independence in 1963. These harsh actions were actually heavily hidden from public memory until historians unearthed them in the 2000s. Following these bloody conflicts, the map started changing at absolutely breakneck speed. We see Ghana under Kwame Nkrumah gaining independence in 1957. Then comes 1960, literally known as the Year of Africa, with 17 nations becoming independent in a single year. Then Kenya in 1963, and by 1965 the rapid wave is mostly complete. Why so incredibly fast? Because France and Britain looked at Algeria and Kenya and did the math. Holding these colonies by force simply caused too much economically and politically, which led to a massive wave of sudden negotiated transfers.
The psychological legacy. You know, decolonization wasn't just about redrawing physical borders. It left profound psychological scars and sparked a really gripping philosophical debate. On one hand, you have Frantz Fanon, a psychiatrist who joined the Algerian FLN. In 1961, he argued that violence actually cleanses the colonized of internalized colonial self-hatred. Contrast that directly with Gandhi's core belief that means and ends are inseparable and that violence only ever corrupts the outcome. Which brings us to our final thought. Are means and ends truly inseparable in the fight for freedom? Can a just society actually be born from the fires of violence? Or does the method of liberation fundamentally corrupt the final outcome? As you reflect on the billion lives changed during this era, weigh the legacy of Gandhi's peaceful resistance against the harsh armed realities of Algeria. It's a massive, difficult question, and it's one still echoing in global struggles today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history that shaped our world.